Good afternoon, gents. It is Thursday, and we are one day closer to the Super Bowl. I know some people can't just contain themselves. Me, I guess, can't wait for the season to be over with. Russ, now you had something about baseball, and
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead for the first, and then I had something else on baseball.
So there's a Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame, which, I would say 5 to 7 years ago I held in, decent regard. I said, hey, this is a good effort. It's got great Canadian players in it. And so I remember thinking this is a good place. And then I want to say maybe about 5 years ago, maybe a little longer, I had a chance to put someone on the ballot because I had written an article about Emile Francis. He gave me a bunch of information about when he was the manager of the North Battleford Beavers in Saskatoon in in the 50s. And in 1956, they went to a thing called the Global World Series, which is really cool. Like if you're thinking of like the World Baseball Classic, this was like the first one.
Right.
And he went with a team that literally from a town of like 5,000 people, put the whole team together, went there, represented Canada. That's a pretty big deal. I believe he won 1 or 2 championships there. And also for Canada, the country, in World War II, I believe he played baseball for them. He was probably too young to even enlist and still enlisted and played baseball. So I sent in a letter. I did everything, and he didn't get in. Instead, this Hall of Fame continues to put in non-Canadians like Lloyd Moseby and Pedro Martinez. So basically what I'm saying is if you played for the Blue Jays or the Expos, you have as good a chance as ended up in the Canadian Hall of Fame as an actual Canadian, which I think is ridiculous. It's a sham.
So Brett Lowry is going to get in because he's Canadian and he played for the Blue Jays.
Right, that's the trifecta there, yeah. I don't like it. I just, and they told me, hey, Francis was a good choice, but we had other choices. And I want to say that year they chose like Sparky Anderson and it's just like, okay, guys, so you're picking either Canadians or guys that played in Canada.
So next year, Willie Upshaw will make it.
Yeah.
Peter, you had something about football, but I just want to mention this because I was talking about it with somebody yesterday. And if you think about it, now, not to the extent that that's going on in baseball right now, but we've had situations in hockey where, players are waiting, with more and more frequency, players are waiting to get that professional tryout contract in September, and they get the 1-year deal. Like Lee Stempniak a couple years ago, I think it was with New Jersey, and New Jersey turned, a good year out of him into a couple draft picks. It's going hog wild in baseball now. I mean, the Lorenzo Cain signing from last week, they're like, you've got JD Martinez, Darvish, a ton of free agents out there, and all the baseball teams are twiddling their thumbs waiting for these guys for their price to come down. And, it's getting to the point where now the question is this transferable to hockey, like to a greater extent, like when we come around next summer or the summer after that? Or do you think that, hockey owners will be able to contain themselves and like hold back? Or do you think that, somebody will just go hog wild and spend the money?
I'll let Peter go first. And then
there's always someone. But I think there's someone because in baseball you have a different sort of office culture within the GM ranks anymore. And hockey is still predominantly filled with people who have been around a long time. And it's going to take a longer time to weed that thinking out. But, there's always someone, and it'll happen. It never ceases to disappoint, right? And yeah, it'll happen.
So here's the thing. I look at it as two completely different situations because baseball has a broken economic system. I wrote about it 2 or 3 years ago. It's getting worse. And the NHL does have that, and most leagues do, like there's always somebody, but there is always somebody when they know they can't do any worse than what the cap is. And so in those cases, that's what makes it completely different. Baseball needs a salary cap in the worst way. And until they get one, there's going to be 15, 20 teams that never have a chance to win.
Well, I think it's starting to happen a little bit in hockey because last year, in previous years, Shattenkirk would have gotten 7 years from somebody. He clearly wanted to go to the Rangers. We knew that, and because he clearly wanted to go to the Rangers, he was willing to take less years. The contract was only 4, Russ. I mean, he got the $7 million. It was sort of like the Paul Stastny deal with St. Louis. He took shorter term, or Vanek with Minnesota. He took shorter term, but he got the money that he wanted. And, Shattenkirk did that. But the thing is, now there seems to be a little more give and take. If you want to go specifically to one team, and I'm sure there were other teams that were interested in Shattenkirk, but I don't think anybody was willing to pay him as much, maybe for a longer term. So
I think there's only give and take on players 25 and older now. If you're under 25, they all want the 8 years that a team can give them, or 7 years, and they're not going to settle for less on their first deals. So I think it's only about the speed, which then affected the age of the game. I don't think this is about like the way the game's financial structure is. I don't know.
Well, I think it's a little bit of both, Russ. I agree with you wholeheartedly there. But I also think that with all these teams now locking up guys coming out of their entry-level contracts,
right,
and the level of which we're seeing players come in and come out of entry-level contracts at the skill level they're at is unprecedented too. I don't think we've seen this since 2005, when we first had that negotiated entry-level contract, where we've seen so many players come out at the level they're coming at. Like, they're really coming out in very good shape, like from a skill set, a points production. But as you add more and more of those into rosters, it only pushes what's available at the upper end for owners or GMs to hold back a little bit, because they don't have the same amount of freedom anymore. They'd rather lock up someone younger, and that's the financial pressure upwards, where the older guys, you're just not going to see that freedom anymore. And that's inevitable with the way the salary cap works.
Peter, what was the football thing you had?
Well, the football thing I was going to say was, I'm not in Winnipeg today. I'm out in rather gray Vancouver. But the day I left, all of a sudden on Twitter showed up Russell Wilson and his lovely wife, Ciara, were not just in Winnipeg. They were north of Winnipeg. And they were in a town called Gimli, which is the largest settlement of Icelandic people outside of Iceland. And Mercedes-Benz does their winter driving course up there. And they brought him and Ciara in to do this. And they showed some stuff on Twitter. And they did this the day I left. And it was basically a whiteout when I left the airport. It was -20 and then minus 32 with the wind chill. And they were out on the frozen lake. All these Mercedes-Benz. It's pretty funny, actually, to see. Now, I'm a huge Seahawks fan, and I love Wilson. And knowing the fact that I passed him like a ship in the night there just drives me nuts. Because I have a car from Gimli, and I would have driven out there really fast had I been in town.
On the frozen tundra of Manitoba. Okay.
Is there anything else? I mean, it's frozen. It's frozen until what? July? Come on.
No.
Stop.
It breaks. It all depends on the year, but sometimes it's
May.
all
It's May, not
May.
July.
May. Okay. May through August.
Hello, Hockey World. Today is Thursday, February 1st, 2018.
I'm Pete Tessier on the Winnipeg Jets, but in Vancouver.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. We are in February, folks, 25 days away from the NHL trade deadline. And after watching one particular team in person last night, I have determined that this team, if their general manager isn't clueless, should be sellers. Because I'm telling you right now, based on what they did on Tuesday against the Florida Panthers at Barclays Center, and what they did or failed to do last night at Air Canada Center in Toronto, the New York Islanders are done. And now the thing is, they're not that far out of the playoffs. I think it's 3 or 4 points. But the effort, Russ, that I saw from the Islanders, you're coming off the All-Star break. There's no excuse, even in second of back-to-back, of being spent physically. They didn't show up. At one time, the game was 20-3 shots on goal for the Leafs. And the Leafs were without, 2 of their veteran defensemen, and were starting, one half of their defense was players who played mostly in the AHL this year.
Yeah, I also saw the opposite, where somebody online said, well, if the Leafs could play like this against the Islanders, they could beat anybody in the playoffs. And I'm like, yeah, except they have to play the Islanders because they have the worst goaltending in the league. The Islanders, for some reason, went into the season thinking their goaltending was good. they may have been the only ones. Like, I've tried to at least pick Greiss as the better guy, and it's funny because I saw that last night a buddy of mine from radio said, you know what? Greiss probably kept them from giving up 6 or 7 goals because that's how bad their defense was in that game. The tandem is awful. The goaltending is awful. There was a time at the beginning of the year where there were a little bit of goalies and movement and such, and Garth probably should have been in on it then. But since he hasn't and wasn't, it's really cost them. Like, I kind of wonder if they wait until the deadline. It's probably too late.
Well, and Dan Petru made the point on Twitter last night. You know, right now DeHaan is out for the year. Boychuk is out. They have guys like Mayfield and Letty, and he said they have like 2 defensemen or 1.5 defensemen. I think they have more than that.
I think they have 3 or 4.
Yeah, but they have a really good group of young forwards. Barzal is really good. That number 1 line, Peter, of Anders Lee, Josh Bailey, and Tavares. I think they combined have like 154 points or something like that. It's and Lee's got 27 goals. So there's a ton of firepower there. And I didn't see it last night. The Leafs jumped on them early. They were up 3-0 by the middle of the second period, and the Islanders could not take advantage of the Leafs, inexperienced defense. In fact, 2 of their rookie defensemen, Travis Dermott and Justin Hall, who was called up from the Marlies, they scored their first NHL goals. But to look at the Islanders right now, if I'm John Tavares, I don't know how I can justify sticking around with the chaos that I think is going on in that organization.
Well, it's not fair to say chaos because.
Let's get Peter first because
I just, who else out there has the ability to spend $11 million on Tavares under the next deal? I mean, how many? Montreal. Okay, that's that.
Detroit.
So now you're jumping out of the frying pan into the fire?
Sure.
Right? Like, you want to go rescue that franchise and where they put themselves, you better just stay in New York.
I was going to say that was the next name out there because almost $8 million drops off the salary cap with Rick Nash going to be a UFA. The Rangers would probably be, if he actually goes to that 5-day window in late June after the draft, I would think that the Rangers, wouldn't you think, Russ, that if
they'll be calling.
They'll be calling. Now I don't know how serious he would be.
No, I don't either, but they definitely would have interest.
Yeah. I don't know who Tavares' agent is, but hopefully his agent took a page out of what Stamkos' agent did when he was free and used the time and really settled in on things. Now, granted, Tampa's a much more stable ownership and scenario and than the Islanders are right now. But that could change in a few years when they're in the new building and that put that whole drama to rest. Mm-hmm. And does that solve anything? It's just how long does he want to wait?
Well, and
there's one difference, though. There is a difference, though.
Yeah, go ahead.
Stamkos was given a limit. Basically, Yzerman said, I'm not spending more than 8.5. Go see what you can get. And because of the way their tax structure went, he stayed. This is different. Yeah. All of this is really different because there are some teams that definitely could outspend the Islanders. Right. The Islanders could spend top of the money and it would be fine because their payroll is not that great and they're clearly losing Josh Bailey. So, they could do it. I don't know what they promised Tavares the other day. Tavares said that they're doing everything they can. So maybe Garth Snow has promised them a goalie and a defensive player, but it hasn't happened. So, they're literally watching this season slip away with the best offense they've had in years. If you're an Islander fan, you got to be sick to your stomach.
Yeah, now here's the list of UFAs on the Islanders coming up this summer. Besides Tavares, Nikolai Kulemin has been on long-term injury for the year, so that they open up 4.1 in cap space there. Bailey's making 3.3. He's probably going to get close to doubling that after the year he's having right now. Yeah. Jason Chimera is making 2.2. DeHaan is out for the year, I believe, but was being paid over $3 million. Thomas Hickey's making over 2. Dennis Seidenberg, based on last night, he's on his last legs, and they get out of Yaroslav Halak's $4.5 million. So there's a lot of space. A lot of space opening up, but I think that the thing that's the most important thing is not how much they have to spend on Tavares. It's the direction of the franchise. And if you let Bailey go, and Bailey's has over 40 assists, I think he has like 55 points. You let him go. Anders Lee is 1 year away from after next year being an unrestricted free agent. At some point, they have to spend the money on players that are supplementary players to Tavares to make it.
Well, they'll sign Lee regardless. They wouldn't even shock me if they sign him this summer. Look, Bailey's just going to be a goner. That's the way it is. Will they get assets for him? We'll see. I mean, that's just there's no way around it.
Russ, I wrote today that given some of the talk that's going around the Jets, is that there may be consideration, and this isn't anything coming from within the club, it's just speculation that's talked about, is that they may be looking for not just a depth center, but maybe a depth player forward. And Bailey fits the criteria. He would be a fantastic ad for a team like the Jets wanting to go in. But what does it cost? What would John,
at least the number one.
First round pick, a prospect, and a roster player? Is that like the standard three?
I think it's just a first round pick and a really good prospect. But the thing is, here's the thing. Ledecky is not going to give up easy on this year. So they're not going to be able to make a trade until the absolute last minute. And they have to really be mathematically out of it, because a new owner is not going to trade a guy like Bailey unless he is completely out of it.
I don't think it's possible for them to be mathematically out of it by February 26th. But if they're
that's what I'm saying. They're going to be in a tough spot.
No, actually, I don't know. If they're 8 to 10 points out and their owner tells them not to,
I'm telling you, Mike, we've seen it before.
I know it's stupid, and that's the thing. It's absolutely.
You might say it's stupid, but you don't own the team.
No, I get it.
You're trying to still sell tickets through the season.
Part of this is
sold out.
Part of this is until you look like the Sabres or the Coyotes, you have to keep presenting hope to your ticket purchasers.
Yes.
And it comes from the top down. And even though we know, statistically speaking, being 8 to 10 points out the deadline, you need a lot of good to happen to you to get in.
Plus, if you dump out this year, like if you trade Bailey before the deadline, that might be the last straw with Tavares. You might have to keep Bailey just because of Tavares.
What difference does it make between letting a guy walk for nothing and getting something for him? If you're not going to
the difference is, Tavares looks at it like, okay, you just gave up on the playoffs. I don't want you giving up on the playoffs when I sign my long-term deal. And at least if they don't, Tavares could say, all right, well, at least they tried as much as they could.
Well, what I'm looking at is that the Islanders have provided no evidence to Tavares that they really want to do something in terms of making the playoffs.
We don't know that. See, behind the scenes,
I know. I'm just
provided it.
I'm just talking the optics. I'm talking about what we see. They haven't made any ads. They haven't improved their goaltending. They've had injuries. They didn't try to plug the holes. They're slipping in the playoff race. If you're an Islanders fan, I had Islanders fans tweeting me last night saying, "Just blow it up. This is over with. This team is not going anywhere." I'm looking at
not going to do that. And especially with the Tavares situation, if you blow it up, you've lost him.
Not blow it up, but I'm saying if you've got, obviously you can't move DeHaan because DeHaan's injured. But if you can get assets, and honestly, I've been advocating this for the Maple Leafs, right? And right now, the Leafs, they're locked into third place. They're probably not going to move anywhere. Although it's plausible they could catch Boston. You never know, but. If they think they're in third place, they're locked there, and if they internally they think, well, it's going to be a challenge for us to beat Boston, then why the hell are you keeping JVR, Bozak, and Komarov?
That's completely different. You're talking about a franchise that could lose their franchise player. If they lose their franchise player, it will set them back 5 to 10 years.
Agreed.
And you're basically, if you're telling me that they're trading Josh Bailey tomorrow, do you think John Tavares is going to support that?
No, I think they're
going to walk into free agency and take a deal.
I think that there will be communication before. See, that's the thing. If you've communicated to John Tavares and before the deadline, and you say, okay, look at it realistically here. We're 10 points out. We're probably not going to make it. We want to make it. Now Josh, for us to pay you $12 million, we can't pay him $6 million. So we're going to have to get assets for him. We can get a first-round pick and a Jack Roslovic.
And he's going to say, I want to try and make the playoffs. I think we can. That's what players do.
And then if he walks away for nothing, he's screwed that organization.
Not really.
So,
I mean, they wouldn't be an organization without him. We got to remember what the Islanders were like.
Not everyone, Mike, acts like Matt Sundin.
Well, yes.
But here's the thing. The Islanders have to know where Tavares' line in the sand is. If they don't know now, they're going to know real soon.
Yes.
And you're going to have your heart-to-heart with the agent and the player, probably through the agent, then with the player, one way or another. And you're going to figure out what it is. What do you want? What do you need to keep this relationship going? And then it'll go to money. And if the relationship if the issues are what we've discussed here, then they have a really big choice to make, right? Because they're going to have to weigh what's the feasibility of us getting to what he needs. And if we can't do it in the timelines given, that's where it sits. And as Russ says, there's probably a lot going behind the scenes. It's just nothing has come out.
Well, and here's the thing. Look at it this way. Next year, they play in the Coliseum. The year after, it'll probably be all of the Coliseum, and then they'll have a new arena. No slight to Matt Barzal, who's going to be a really nice player.
Yes.
He's not John Tavares. This is the New York market. Long Island fans are not going to stand for, we have Matt Barzal and some other guys. John Tavares is gone, and this is who we want you to buy season tickets based off of. And that's not going to – and Andrew Ladd will be 100 by then.
And we're talking about, and according to what I heard yesterday, we're talking about 3 years. 3 years for an environmental study and for them to break ground and build it. So you're talking about if, Tavares, I believe, is turning 28. He's 27 now. You're talking about him being 31 before this building is built. And I'm not to say his career will be over with, because I think he'll last into his mid-30s at least, but you're talking about the bulk of his prime gone before he's playing in this new building that he's being promised. And by that time, who knows who's going to be around with the Islanders. So that's like, I mean, okay, I'm sure he's going to be loyal to the franchise, and if they provide him some sort of structure of what they're going to do and an idea, maybe he'll be willing to stay. But if I was him, I'm really skeptical, because that team seems to be a rudderless ship. That's all I can say.
I don't think it's that bad. I think they have problems. I still think he's 70% staying. But again, if they change the course in the next couple of weeks, I do think it could severely affect it. That's all.
Now, Peter, I just want to touch on the Leafs for a second, just because last night Hainsey was sick. Polak was sick. They had to place him on injured reserve just to make room. They had Travis Dermott. Now, he's been playing. He's played his 9th game last night. Looks like he's going to stay around a little longer. Riley was out. Nikita Zaitsev came back after missing over 6 weeks with a broken foot. And now they played the Islanders, and the Islanders just, I think, sort of mailed it in. But it was a pretty nice effort by the Leafs, and very encouraging in terms of a young defenseman like Dermott playing as well as he did. But that followed what Mike Babcock mentioned in the morning during his morning presser, where he essentially said, if we play well enough, we expect, or he was lobbying Lou Lamoriello to get him some help. And this is, and I said this yesterday on the webcast, this is the same blueprint that they followed last year, where Lou Lamoriello at the deadline traded for a veteran in Brian Boyle, and they gave up a second-round pick for a guy who I don't think really even helped them that much. He had 3 assists in 21 games. They gave up a second-round pick, and what was it, Volkov, Russ? Yeah, and who they got? Champa got a good prospect.
He's already playing in the AHL and has 26 points.
Yeah. If you're Toronto and if you're Lamoriello, I mean, Babcock is putting pressure on him in that sense. Lou Lamoriello is going to do what Lou Lamoriello is going to do, but Babcock wants to win now. Lamoriello wants to win, but I think he doesn't want to empty the Leafs organization of prospects for somebody who they can't keep long term. And I think that internal battle that's sort of going on right now is pretty interesting.
Well, the Leafs have a big problem, and the big problem is they have 3 forwards. They have to sign: Nylander, Marner, and Matthews. And until you get them signed and start projecting out, it's really hard to say how much can I spend when you don't know what you're going to have to spend on those guys.
Right.
I think the Leafs are in a position. I think at the beginning of the year when the Leafs were really rolling at first and things were going well for them, they're scoring a lot of goals. There's a lot of talk about them particularly on Twitter and social media, that this is the time to go for it while these guys are cheap. But that's when you didn't have Boston looking like Boston right now. Mm-hmm. And if you put the Leafs and Boston in a series, say they wound up getting one, who are you putting your money on right now? You're probably putting it on the Bruins, right?
Yeah. I mean, not this moment because McAvoy is out and Backus is out and Marchand's suspended, but when it comes to mid-April, yes, probably.
Yeah, you're probably putting it on there. You also have to hope that Freddie Anderson doesn't have a bit of a slide, because a lot of the Leafs' success is built on a guy who's playing really well between the pipes right now. And that's part of the team. Like, it doesn't discount what they're doing. It just means that it's a key thing. And if something goes a little wrong there, watch out. So now, taking all that, that's probably why Lamoriello is sitting here going, I've got all the assets in the world. This team's never been deeper in this organization.
Right.
But is it the right time based on what I have to go up against?
It's okay.
That's where I wonder how he's weighing it, right?
Well, it's
about if everything goes like this, can I get a player that's going to make me a favorite against any of these teams? I don't know if he can.
Well, and that's
he can, but will he?
And that's the problem, because I think that there's a willingness in that organization to trade a guy like Kasperi Kapanen, who was a really good young player and a draft pick, to get a top 4 defenseman, or, in some instances, maybe even a top 2 defenseman, if it's in a deal for, say, an Oliver Ekman-Larsson or something of that regard. Problem is that deal's probably not there until the summer. And all the deals that are out there, I think, that are potential before February 26th are guys with a year left in their contracts, like Yarmulson, or rentals like Jack Johnson or Erica Branson or Mike Green. And I don't think that they're willing to give up a first-round pick or a second-round pick for guys who I don't think fit what they're looking for. So in that instance, I agree with Lamoriello's, cautious, let the kids play, see where we go from here, and not do a repeat of the Brian Boyle deal. But you've got Babcock lobbying to improve them. But, in a press conference, which I was, it really didn't strike me that much until I reread the transcript, and he's like, mentioning Lou Lamoriello 2 or 3 times in a span of a minute or two. And I'm like, wow. It's like, I'm sure he's communicated this to Lamoriello privately. He says he has a good rapport with him, but to come out in a press conference and say that, I'm like, geez.
So I'm going to do something in backwards order,
okay,
based on what's going on in the chat room and what I see online. Before we talk about the Flyers game, I want to talk about the red hot mess that the Metro is. Like, there's so many fans out there of the Islanders, of the Flyers, of the Devil. Like, they're all expecting their team to just magically fall out of it or gain a playoff spot. Like, it's 50-50 split. The interesting thing is, when you've got 3 teams that have played 50 games and 3 points separates 2 playoff spots, there isn't a GM in the world that's giving up on making playoffs based on that. And I didn't even put the Islanders in this because they played 2 more games. Right. But you know what I mean? There's no GM in the world that is all of a sudden throwing in a towel for any of these teams and saying, oh, no, we have no chance. Because here's the thing. We've seen this before. The way the Flyers made it a couple of years ago was simply because everything broke right as far as other teams losing, and one of these teams could just back in that way.
And that's why these Larry Brooks rumors regarding the Rangers make absolutely no freaking sense, because they're 2 points out of a playoff spot. I mean, I realize that Kreider is out, I realize that Shattenkirk is out, but you're right on the precipice. And
actually,
1 point. Why would you trade? I mean, Nash, if you get a great return, fine. Why would you trade Nash or Grabner or, then the names that we said we don't believe?
Well, look at the other circumstances. Like, the other circumstances, Peter, are you look at it and you say, okay, the Flyers tonight are going with Alex Lyon, who's making his NHL debut. Who the hell knows what happens in that game, right? The Devils are playing them, so somebody's going to get 2 points. Probably won't be an overtime game. So you look at the way these other teams, the Islanders just didn't even show up against Toronto. Like, it's really going to be really hard for the Rangers to just walk away like the New York Giants did that time with Kurt Warner, a quarterback, and say, okay, you know what? we don't want to make the playoffs at 9-7. The NHL doesn't work that way. There's too much money at stake. But what do you think, Peter?
No, I agree with you. I think and the Rangers are going to do everything to get in. I just don't understand why they start selling now unless something like, you know, I think it's easy to say they should sell because you look at it objectively, but that idea of you say when you own the team or you're the manager of it, you have to keep something going forward, right? You have to give fans a reason to believe in what your cause is. And the Rangers need to keep that going. I mean, it's the biggest hockey market. I mean, I know Toronto's the biggest, but it is the biggest sports market in the NHL. And you're fighting against a lot of other properties out there. Even if
but here's the fan reaction.
You've got to still keep doing it. You've got to still
get in the chat room. It says, well, they'll get killed in the first round. And it's like, teams don't think that way. Teams think, how many home games can we get in the first round? And when we're in it, we have a chance, and we have a goalie like Lundqvist, and you never know. That's the way teams think.
Yeah, if it's new,
the Rangers get 3 home games in the first round. I mean, given their ticket prices and revenue, that's probably $6 million.
Right, it's a lot of money.
That's a lot. That's 3 players if you play it right.
And if it's New York versus New Jersey, an inexperienced Devils team, you got a decent chance of
you got a shot.
You got a shot. So I mean, I get that. Now, what's interesting, and like these injuries have happened over the last week or so. Scheifele is just starting to skate now, but Trouba's injury, which is 6 to 8 weeks, I mean, that's really, I mean, that's damaging to the Jets. Although, you know, I think they're in a pretty decent position right now in terms of making the playoffs. But right now, I think they're looking at, you know, finishing in first place in the Central and advancing. And the Bruins were 18 games earning at least a point. They've now lost within the span of 2 weeks. They've lost McAvoy to the heart ablation. They've lost Marchand for 5 games for the suspension, and then Backus gets hurt by the Nick Ritchie hit.
And this is why I can't pick them to be a cup team.
Right. Now, the thing is, with these teams positioned where they are, is this the time that Kevin Cheveldayoff and Don Sweeney say, okay, we've got picks and prospects in this organization. We've got Zaboral, we've got Sinishin, we've got Anders Bjork got hurt, but we've got prospects in the organization. We think we have a chance to win. Maybe this is the time to make the deal. And in Winnipeg, the same situation. What do you think, Peter, in terms of the mindset of Cheveldayoff?
I think the mindset is he's going to do something. It's been talked about, it's been speculated. There's been small leagues via Elliot Friedman with his 31 Thoughts. There's been enough talk. The problem is it always comes from someplace else because no one ever gets anything out of Winnipeg. It's always seeing a Winnipeg scout here or a call from another team. The one question that's starting to come up around some of the sort of the hardcore followers of the team is, what does Nick Petan have to do to get a fair shake with this team right now?
I don't think he's going to. I think it's a numbers game.
I think exactly. I totally agree with you. Jack Roslovic's up. Nick Petan has proven he's a capable middle 6 player, and particularly on some of the lesser teams in the NHL. But Roslovic's the flavor, and they want to go with Roslovic. Fine. Nick Petan's.
If you look at it, I'll tell you what I think. While Petan may be a half a step faster, Roslovic could do everything Petan could do at the size that he's at. That's the issue.
And I think Roslovic's actually faster. Petan's good.
It's close. It's close. Yeah.
But I think they're going with that way, and I think Nick Petan's going to be Chevy's. He's going to be the prospect player that he's going to dangle to get something significant. That's talking about Josh Bailey earlier. Is that enough of a deal to start moving something towards the Islanders?
It can be interpreted 2 ways. It can be interpreted that, yes, Petan is the guy that they would move in a deal because they're not, maybe they're not sold on him or they're not as high on him. Or could it be that they're playing Roslovic now because Roslovic is the player that other teams want because he's young and cheap?
He's untouchable from what I can gauge. He's untouchable.
No, there's no way. Petan,
Kyle Connor, same thing.
Untouchable.
Yeah, 16 goals this year. He had a nice one against Tampa the other night. There's no way.
Yeah.
I think Petan needs a new deal this year, though.
Yeah.
That would be the other reason. And so with the contracts, who they're going to have to pay, is he going to take a 2-way deal to be going back and forth with the Moose?
Probably not.
Probably not. Like, it's better for him from a personal point of view and what his career could do to get out of there. I think it's just a logjam.
Yeah,
and the Jets don't need to add someone long term. They need a rental. They need a true rental, but with skill, not and if they could get someone like a Bailey who can play either side on the wings, who can put the puck in the net, can pass. Mm-hmm. They give up Patan and a first for that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, but like I said, they're going to be waiting until the 11th hour for that. I think they're better off looking at a team like Florida, who Florida still needs offense, no matter any way you look at it, especially after losing Marchessault. They have guys they could trade. They do.
That's true. That's true. That's an interesting thing. Again, it's hard to understand what's going on with Dale Talon and what he's trying to build there. And I think that's why they sort of fall off the radar a little bit is Dale Talon sort of moves in the last little bit have come under a fair bit of fire. And
it's not his fault. He really inherited a mess.
And some people think it's been made more of a mess by him trying to undo what the previous management team.
I don't think that's the case.
I don't think that's the case, because I think some of the moves that they made were pretty weak. He's been criticized for what happened with Vegas, him, getting rid of Marchessault and trading Riley Smith and getting out from under that contract, and now they're enjoying all that success in Vegas. But if you looked at it before all this stuff happened, Riley Smith, I think, had 4 years at $5 million per, and everybody was saying that's a coup to get out from under that deal if you didn't think Riley Smith was worth it. And now Florida has been, Luongo's out. Nobody knows whether he's done for his career. He's probably trying to come back, but he's 38 years old and he's got these problems. Reimer is having
Harry Sateri, Mike.
Harry Sateri, the savior. That our organization's in trouble, but they do have some good young players, and I think
Owen Tippett, they've got players.
Yeah, and I'd like to build around Ekblad, Huberdeau, Barkov. That the core is there, and Tippett, and I'm sorry, Bukestad and the
Trocheck. Trocheck's had an amazing year.
Yeah, where they're weak is on the wings, and I've always said that I thought Toronto and Florida, because I'm always fixated on Toronto, that would be a good trading partner, because the Leafs are so loaded organizationally on the wings, and Florida's got defense, and they're loaded at center. So
but if I'm Florida, I look to get a guy like Patan, because he's going to play the wing. He's not going to play center in the NHL. I don't think.
Now, Russ, the Flyers and Washington, the Flyers were leading 2-0, and then apparently Michael Neuwirth became Michael Neuwirth.
Yeah, and in a span of 47 seconds, gave up two of the worst goals you ever want to see. But here's the thing. There were a couple things that happened in this game that were fascinating. The first one is Madison Bowey made one of the greatest passes of the season to give, I think it was Chandler Stevenson, a goal, and he hadn't had a goal in like 27 games or something. But it was like on a bad change, but he literally saw a seam cross ice and made a great pass. Again, remember, Bowey's a young guy. I've been talking about him for a year and change, and he's finally getting his chance. And I didn't know he had that pass in him. So that's pretty exciting for the Caps. That's one thing. The other thing is, the old thing that people use to rip the Caps. Well, they don't have enough defense. Okay, so this week coming up on my XM show on Sirius, we talked about 5 defensemen in their system. Mm-hmm. They are so loaded with defensemen now, and you can see they have Christian Juices playing, Madison Bowey's playing. They've got Siegenthaler coming.
Johansson.
Yeah, they have Lucas Johansson coming. They have Siegenthaler coming. Like, this is a team that is going to have the defense. So people should sort of, like, even fans that are thinking that should definitely pipe down. And it does look like Brooks Orpik has been really teaching a lot of them. And at the NHL level, which, I guess that's one of the benefits of keeping him around, because we all thought, hey, the contract's a little top heavy, but he's been helping them.
Yeah, you'd prefer your teacher doesn't get paid $5.25 million.
But sometimes that's the way it is. Right. But the point is, the Caps do have that going for them. The Flyers in that game, those goals were deflating. So they end up taking them out. Later in the game, Lyon stops like 5 or 7 shots, and now Lyon gets the start. Nolan Patrick got a goal in that game. And the thing that's significant about that is really what I've been talking about all year. He finally has line mates he could play with in Voracek and Simmons. And now with him and Voracek and Simmons, he gets the first goal of the game, I think it was. And it was beautiful. And it was everything you knew Patrick can do. But again, like we've talked about, when you're in a third line role playing with guys that aren't like that, you can't do that. And so you're going to see Nolan Patrick start to break out offensively now that he's playing with those guys. But the problem with the Flyers is going to be in between the pipes because Elliott's out. And now Neuwirth, after the game, said he didn't feel right in the first period with his stomach. And then the coach said, well, he didn't tell me that. So now there's these little things that are cropping up. And this is, things that could derail a season for them very easily if you thought that they were going to make the playoffs. I never really did, but definitely could derail them.
Right. Peter, since you're on the West Coast, it was interesting earlier in the week. It came out from Jim Benning, the Canucks GM, that all of a sudden the guy who's on like the top 10 of the TSN trade list, who's been widely regarded as being on the block for more than I would say more than 3 months, Eric Branson, who was out with back spasms, but now I think he's back now. It was speculated he's on the block. They're shopping him around, and now all of a sudden Jim Benning is saying, "Well, we'd like to sign him." So right now, this is the way I interpreted it, and tell me if you buy this or if you disagree. I interpreted this as we're not getting the kind of offers that we want for Erica Branson, so we're gonna pretend that we want to sign him, and in hopes that teams will pony up a little more, and we'll get something worthwhile before February 26th, because we really don't want to sign him, but we just want to pretend like we want to sign him.
Yeah, instead of sending a memo out to every team like he's done before, someone's talked to Benning and said, oh, you have to have a little nuance in your game if you're not getting what you want. That's exactly it. I mean, when you're out here and you talk to people about the Canucks, there's a lot of head scratching. There's a lot of disengagement because although the Canucks have some really interesting pieces that are, you got Brock Besser, you've got Barrett, you've got Horvat, and you've got Pettersson coming. There's still not a semblance of where this team's going, right? They just don't know, and no one really understands what the GM is trying to do. Unfortunately, hopefully that's exactly what's happening. He's trying to get the pot sweetened a little bit and say, well, if we don't have to trade him, we'll sign him, and make him feel, make other teams come in, but. You never get a sense of what's really going on with Vancouver here because it's been kind of all over the map for a while now. And Bennings kind of doesn't present a level of confidence towards the fan base and the media that says, what's the actual plan? I think you can see it, but it's not easy to see.
Yeah, when Kevin Allen was on the show, we were talking about the Canucks and Besser, and then we switched to Jake Virtanen and how there seemed to be hope that maybe he was straightening things out, and now it's sort of like, they're not sure what's going on with him. I mean, he's got a lot of talent, but they just can't seem to realize his talent. And then I heard this week that Juolevi, after I thought playing fairly well at the World Junior, was a healthy scratch for his team in the SM Liga in Finland. And I guess Sammy Salo is either his coach or his general manager there. And he says, he'll be back in the lineup. But when you're healthy scratching a 19-year-old who was the 5th overall pick, it's not exactly a good sign.
Yeah, but that's also a team that has like 25 and 35-year-olds.
Okay.
What they'll do is they'll make sure he comes over next year so they can control that. It's probably gotten to the point where it's like, all right, let's get him over here. Because, again, we don't know what it is. Juolevi could be playing third pair there, not playing exactly great because it doesn't fill his skill set, and they want to make the playoffs, right? So that I don't put too much stock into that.
Or he needs to, or the coach has said to him, "Look, you're making these mistakes. Watch the game and watch this." That's happened to a lot of guys over the years. Two in particular, who are very popular in Vancouver. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're Henrik and Daniel. Early in their careers, they were in the press box a couple times because they just needed to see the game in a different context to what the coach was talking about. And it wasn't a punishment. It was like, look, having you in and out of the lineup isn't going to change the course of the season. So missing a game or two to see what we want you to do is probably not a bad thing. And look how that turned out. I'm not saying it's a comparison, but the rationale is a comparison.
I get what you're saying, though. It makes sense.
Now, you had something regarding Ryan Rishaug comments that he made, or
so it's more of a Twitter thing, but everyone seems to be chiming in, and it seems that Ryan Rishaug had a bit of an issue with Al Montoya now not talking to the media, and Rishaug has criticized Connor Hellebuck for doing it as well on game day, and he makes the point of basically kind of presenting that players have an obligation to talk because that's what pays the bills for the NHL by giving access as part of the entertainment product.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just can't go that far. And I think people are starting to see this for what it is that there's a segment within the Oilers sort of universe or sphere that just nothing can get along, right? No one gets along there right now. And it's happening with the media too. And now there's been it was all over Twitter for a while. I couldn't believe it. And you know, what point does that serve for Rishaug to get people to come in and start picking sides on this argument? I mean, you got some Twitter hits. Great.
Well, he did double down on it by saying that he's fragile by doing that. There's a newsflash for Ryan Rishaug. There's a lot of goalies that do this.
Yeah, I was going to say last week Colorado was at Air Canada Center to play the Leafs, and Jonathan Bernier, and obviously a lot of people in Toronto would want to talk to Jonathan Bernier, being the ex-Leaf. Bernier would not talk to the media until after the game. Would not talk before the game. Yeah. That's like, I mean, Russ, how many times have we heard about starting pitchers in baseball not talking to the media before their start? They're more than glad to do it after their start. All I know is right now in Edmonton, everybody's nerves are wearing thin. The disappointment of that franchise and where they thought that they were going, where everybody was telling them that they were going, and where they've ended up has everybody in a frazzle. You know, not including probably management and ownership there. And I think that is probably going to have them. I mean, I don't know whether that means that, that you're going to see McClellan and maybe Chiarelli gone at the end of this year and new management there. But, you know, how many times can they keep switching things around? It's just chaos there.
Yeah, it's just, you know, again, this is a member of the media painting a guy with an unfair brush. And fans let them know, like of other teams, that you're not only are you not right, you couldn't be more wrong. And look, players don't pay a lot of attention to it. But again, yes, Edmonton is a mess. And a lot of it has to do with their media coverage too, as far as what the perception is with their fan base. Their media coverage is very intense. And right now, the team isn't performing to where they thought they would be. Again, I don't know who was picking them for the Stanley Cup, but people were, and that's clear that they're not going to get to the Stanley Cup. So now, you know, I think people who cover the team have to figure out other ways to cover them. Write about their prospects. That's what I always say. You know, and it's like there's very easy ways around this. There really are.
Well, if you're media lead, and Rishaug's a TV guy, so he's going to be having segments for the broadcast or whatever, is dependent on talking to the backup goalie, you're probably missing a lot of other things.
Yeah, a ton.
And that's it. And I, you know, that Russ and Mike, you raised a really good point about pitchers. And goalies are no different. I mean, if you've got to get in the zone and start hurling balls at 90 miles an hour and thinking about that thing, the concentration there is massive. Well, now put it on the opposite side where you got to take pucks hurtling at you at 90 miles an hour. Yeah. And get in that zone and think about how you do it. Think about how all the different guys shoot in the telltales you're looking for with different shooters. You don't have time to go and blabber around about that. You're preparing yourself for what you're about to do. And frankly, we expect these guys. No one more in Edmonton needs players to be at their peak performance right now than the Oilers do. So why would you worry about taking them out of the zone they need to get into to be at peak performance? Yeah,
this is just one in a series of distractions that they just don't need. Yeah. But it keeps coming up. This is like what happened with the Leafs during that year where, you know, we had Salute Gate and, and ended with the Phil Kessel hot dog story and all these things, all these distractions, all these little side stories. It just snowballed, and it's not good for a franchise to have all this crap and discontent and everything rolled up.
Now, I saw a quote yesterday, Mike. I'm
okay.
pulling it up now because it comes from Ryan Zapolsky, the Team USA goalie, and I just had to laugh. It was off of Steve Wino's feed, and he said Steve Wino or someone asked him who scares him most on Russia, and he answered, "I don't think anybody scares me particularly, but they have a lot of skill." It's like, look, dude, like don't go with that eye of the tiger approach when you don't have a reputation in international hockey at all. When you're playing against Pavel Datsyuk and Ilya Kovalchuk and a lot of other really good guys. That, to me, that just makes me giggle.
That guy Clubber Lang, he scares me.
Yeah.
Okay. A few
now,
things.
Peter, do you have a thought about that? Because I thought it was pretty humorous.
I whatever. If it keeps them loose, sure. Like whatever works.
How can they not be loose? Like,
you have almost no chance. So why wouldn't you be loose?
Yeah. So I mean, it's fun. Would I say it? No, but it's fun. Like, more of that as the Olympics gets into full swing, because I think
how Canada will have a chance if in the first period of the Canada-Russia game, Maxim Lapierre takes out Pavel Datsyuk's knee. Yeah. That's how Canada will have a chance.
Yep.
Other than that, I don't see them having a big chance. Sorry, but Justin Peters, Ben Scrivens, and Kevin Poulin doesn't.
Just to generically say they have a lot of skill, is just like really just like glib.
Yeah. Okay.
As a Canadian, I just like to add that once again, when it's not best on best, Russia looks really good.
Yeah. A few things from X rumors today. He was told by what he said is a very connected source regarding Shea Weber. Now, Weber is under contract for, I believe it's 8 more years at 7.8. He's 31, Russ, I think 31 or 32. He's saying the Habs are talking up the idea that Shea Weber is signed and reasonable compared to the potential salaries that Drew Doughty will get as a free agent in 2 years, Trouba or even Erik Karlsson. His name is definitely out there, and many teams are very interested. And this is my personal belief. I can see that many teams would be interested. The cap recapture situation wouldn't hurt a team other than Nashville when he retires. So, if a team can fit that 7.8 in their salary cap, I could see teams being interested, but I can't see teams giving up what Montreal would absolutely need for Weber, because they're going to have to justify a Weber trade if they actually do it, to say we gave up PK Subban for this and now we got to get something really good. And they're not going to get anything that they can sell to the public and say, this is why we made that deal, and this is why at least we got something really good for the future for PK Subban. No, I don't see them getting that much in a Weber deal.
Carey Price, they better keep Shea Weber. That's all.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, he lists Philly, Chicago, LA, Minnesota. I don't know how LA would.
You know what? If I'm Chiarelli, I get on the phone with Bergevin and I start talking and say, how much of Weber's contract do you want to keep? And I'll and put together something. Like, I mean, you might as well. Like, what more do the Oilers have to lose?
Here's the funny thing. I agree with you, but here's the funny thing. I don't even know if they would give the okay for Bergevin to make a trade of Shea Weber, because I don't know how much longer Mark Bergevin will have his job.
Well, I mean, they just gave him an extension, Russ. So, I mean, if they're going to eat that, because, I mean, he's got a 4-year extension. His contract is up, I think, in 2022. So if they're going to eat that.
I know, most likely he'll be there. But I'm just saying, I think they're going to look at this. Again, if you get rid of Shea Weber, you now are talking about a situation where Carey Price is going to be with a bunch of muckers for the rest of his deal, and then he's going to leave unless they turn it around. Like, I don't think this is the way the Canadiens want it to go. I don't.
Right. Now, in connection with the Canadiens. He talks about Pacioretty. He says the Canadiens, and this has been widely reported, and that the Canadiens will only accept a young center in a deal for either Galchenyuk or Pacioretty. I can see that, and that makes a lot of sense because they have to make up for the stupidity of the Duran deal. Not that Duran is not a good player, he is, but trying to make him a center when he was not a center was dumb. It was just dumb. But now the thing is, though, I don't think you're getting a young center out of anybody during the season, especially the type of young center they're looking for a guy who scored 30 goals 4 years in a row. So I don't know if that's a deal that happens before the deadline. Montreal is going to probably have to come off the young center thing if they're going to move Pacioretty before the deadline, and that I don't think they're going to come off of it. So I think it's going to be a draft deal. What do you think?
I thought you were talking to Peter first.
Anybody?
Go ahead, Russ.
Well, I'm setting the chat room straight because somebody said that I forget who he said that votes for the Masterton, the players, and I'm like, no. The hockey writers vote for the Masterton.
Did. Thank you. We did.
I know.
Right here.
So you're gonna have to rephrase it for me. Sorry, I was getting mad there.
No, I was just saying that the Canadiens are looking for a young center for Pacioretty, which I think is them having to make up for the stupid move of trading for Drouin, expecting him to be a center. And I don't think that the Canadiens are going to get a young center that they would think is on the level of worth Pacioretty during the season. It's more than likely that's a deal that's made at the draft. I don't see anybody I don't see Columbus giving up Alex Wenberg or something like that.
No, I think it would be at the draft because I think teams, you have to look at what the cap is going to be at, and there might be a team that looks at a couple players, maybe unproven, or maybe looking at their first deal and say, you know what, they're not really in our plans now based on the way our finances are, who we have to pay down the road, and what the cap is doing this year. So I think it is a draft thing. I agree.
Peter?
Yeah. I mean, he's only got one more year at 4.5, so it's not a horrible bad situation.
No.
But again, it's the age. He's 29, so he's not ancient, but why are you giving up something good if you can't, something young and good to get old and okay?
It's the team. Right? It's the team that's got the short window. It's the Nashville. Yeah. It's the Columbus. It's the team that wants to win in the next 2 years. That is perfect for that type of player because then they're not obligated to sign them they have to be loaded with prospects and say, okay, we're willing to give up that young prospect to say if you're Nashville, we're willing to give up Dante Fabro in a deal. Not even though he's not a center, we're willing to give up Dante Fabro for Pacioretty.
Well, I'll give you a guy like Fabro. I don't think will ever be dealt
right,
but I think if you looked at Calgary and Calgary said, yeah, we might give you Mark Jankowski and a pick, and I could see that being a reasonable deal because if that's if you're looking for a little size in center and that's something where that would help both teams and maybe Pacioretty would re-sign with Calgary and Calgary certainly could use a little more toughness. I think that's something that I think even Randy Workman would agree with. And, I think that's the kind of, deal we're talking about.
The only problem with that is Calgary doesn't have their first, but Peter, go ahead.
Yeah. But,
I didn't say there was first in that deal.
Yeah. But here's the thing with Calgary too, is it sounds like Sam Bennett and the coach Gulitson and just the situation isn't working for Sam Bennett there anymore.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a player you could move. He's a center.
That's true.
You could move, and you could probably find a basis for something there. Yes. There's. I don't think they'd want to give up on Jankowski yet, and I think they would hold back. And Bennett signed for one more year at a very affordable rate too.
Yeah.
And is that a change of scenario thing? A lot like a Jake Virtanen. Is that eventually a change of scenario situation?
Well, I mean, especially with the fact that he's coming off his entry-level deal this year. They've got Ferland to sign. They've got Backlund to sign. So, they have players that they need to spend money on to keep. So, they may not be willing to spend the money on Bennett if they don't think he's going in the direction that they want him to. Last one on Xblog, and if we have any quick questions or two in the chat, we can answer that. He says Rick Nash, he's hearing the Vegas Golden Knights, And the only thing I hesitate with that, I mean, okay, I think potentially they could be buyers. I don't know whether Nash would waive to go to Vegas. But the thing is, and everybody has said this, would you risk the chemistry that's going on with Vegas to add a big player at the deadline? And I don't know whether
George is adding big money.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, it's for 2 months, Russ.
But still, for 2 months, it's going to be $2 million.
Right, but they're making money. They're making money.
I get it, but I don't think that's the kind of player McPhee is looking for. I think McPhee is looking for someone that if he's going to grab him, he's going to grab him for more than this year. And honestly, Rick Nash, at the beginning of the year, said he's going nowhere. I'm taking him at his word. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think because he holds the hammer, Rick Nash, you might say, hey, he's going to want to play for a playoff team if the Rangers are not a playoff team. But he likes it in New York, and basically there's obviously a reason he doesn't want to leave, and so I don't think he's going to leave under any circumstances this season.
Okay, guys, great show. We will be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Peter Tessier, for Russ Cohen, and was that Pearl in the background?
Pearl is she stole a bag from lunch and she's shredding it.
There you go. And for Perla, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.